it's Brenda and my sincere pleasure to welcome David to Santa Fe after all of this time of talking about it.
Okay, so what is the Arava Institute? We are an academic research institute located, as I mentioned, on Kibbutz Keturah, which is in the very south of Israel on the border with Jordan. We bring Jews and Arabs together, Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, international students, in order to teach that nature knows no borders. We offer just 2 semesters of academic credit through our partner, Ben-Gurion University, and we teach courses in both social sciences and natural sciences. So we're teaching courses like ecology, earth sciences, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture. But we also teach courses in environmental law, environmental ethics, religion in the environment, environmental economics, all the tools that students need to be environmental leaders and professionals when they go back to their home universities or their home communities.
The Arava Institute for Environmental Studies is a leading environmental research program in the Middle East. Founded in 1996 and accredited through Ben-Gurion University, the Arava Institute focuses on regional cooperation on a range of environmental issues and challenges. Over the past 20 years, Israelis, Palestinians, and Jordanians have become increasingly aware of the widespread environmental degradation in the region of the world and the increasing scarcity of their shared resources, especially clean water. Located in Israel's remote southern Arava Desert, the Arava Institute is a unique oasis where Jordanians, Palestinians, and Israelis can work together to find solutions. Understanding that nature knows no borders, the Arava Institute's mission is to advance cross-border environmental cooperation regardless of political conflicts. They have spent 20 years training a new generation of professionals and activists who are now meeting the region's environmental challenges with innovative peace-building solutions.
We try and reach a balance of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 are Israelis, 1/3 are Palestinians or Jordanians, and 1/3 are international students. We also have 4 centers of research. Our Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation, which is headed by Dr. Tariq Abu Hamid, who you saw here, deals with one of Israel's most abundant resources, sun, and trying to turn that into energy. The Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation was started by Dr. Tariq Abu Hamid, who's a Palestinian from East Jerusalem, who moved down to the kibbutz in order to establish this center, which has helped to launch a revolution in the southern Arava. Today, after 10 years of work doing research and promoting and advancing renewable energy, the southern Arava, the area that I live in, which covers about 13% of the land of Israel and includes 10 small kibbutzim communities like mine, plus the city of Eilat, 85% of the electricity used during the day comes from solar panels. Once we can find the best solution for storage, which is something that our institute is working on, we will then be able to double that, and we will have 24/7 electricity and maybe someday be even exporters to electricity to the north and to our neighbors in the east and the west. The Center for Transboundary Water Management, headed by Dr. Clive Lipcham, which I understand some of you know, was here a couple of months ago. Yeah? Yeah. Dr. Clive Lipcham heads the Center for Transboundary Water Management, which deals with one of the scarcest resources in the Middle East, water, right? But it's also a shared resource. So we work together with our Palestinian and Jordanian colleagues in order to make sure that there's enough water for everybody in the region, that the water is clean and drinkable, and that there's enough water for nature. Our Center for Sustainable Agriculture, headed by Dr. Elaine Soloway, who's a member of my kibbutz, and who's been doing research into crops and plants that are appropriate for arid lands like the Arava. You guys have, I hear, 12 inches of rain in a good year. That's 12 times the amount of rain we get in the Arava. We get less than 1 inch of rain a year. So Elaine has trees and plants that can grow, of course, mostly with irrigation, but are able to grow and flourish in these extreme climates. Elaine is most famous as being the mother of Methuselah. Who's Methuselah? Methuselah, aside from being a person in the Bible who lived for 1,000 years, is a date tree that was sprouted from a date seed that was found on Masada. Masada is an ancient ruin in Israel along the Dead Sea, where a major revolt took place by the Jewish community then against the Romans who controlled the area. They found seeds, different ancient seeds, some of them being date seeds, which are relatively large for a seed. Those seeds were sitting in an archaeologist's desk. Who's an archaeologist here? Somebody was, yeah, right. It was sitting in this archaeologist's desk in a clay pot. They were given to Dr. Soloway, my colleague, who took 6 of them and did a bunch of different protocols and was able to get one of them to sprout. That was almost 10 years ago. Now, the thing you need to know about date trees is that date trees are either male or female. Right? Of course, if they're male, then that's pretty generic, right? Males are pretty generic, easily replaceable. The female is what is important because the female tree bears fruit. And we were all hoping that Methuselah, I'm not sure why we named the tree Methuselah, if this is what we were hoping for. We were hoping that Methuselah would be a female. Lo and behold, Methuselah lived up to his name. And after 6 years, which is about how long it takes to figure out whether or not they're male or female, we discovered that Methuselah was a male. However, we didn't lose hope, and Elaine received 4 ancient seeds from Masada, which were carbon dated as being actually 2,000 years old, and has now managed to sprout 6 more. This is a strain, a variety of dates that went extinct. So we're hoping that within a few years after we plant these trees, we're going to see again the Judean date that you read about in the Bible. And then there is our Center for Arid Land Conservation, which is a center that looks at the Arava Valley, this valley that the Institute is located, which is between the Dead Sea and the Red Sea. And we work together with our Jordan. It's a shared ecosystem, right? In a hyper-arid climate, less than 1 inch of rain a year, extreme temperatures in the summer, very, very dry. And the plants and animals that live in this region, therefore, are unique, many of them endemic. And so we work together with our Jordanian colleagues cross-border, many of whom are graduates of the Arava Institute, in order to try and protect this unique ecosystem and help it flourish. Obviously, bringing a bunch of Jews and Arabs, Palestinians, Israelis together to study together has its own challenges. When we began the program many years ago, we thought we'd bring a bunch of Jews and Arabs together, throw them in a room, teach them about the environment, because maybe that's something we could all agree on, and all the rest of that stuff they would just talk about on their own. We wouldn't worry about it. Of course, we found out that this doesn't work so well, and that in fact students could smile and just not say what they really think, keep it all inside, or it would come out but in a not productive way. And so very early on, we created a program that we called the Peace Building Leadership Seminar, which is a once-a-week not-for-credit program that's required of all students, and it's where we talk about what they don't want to talk about. It's where we talk about history, politics, religion, war, occupation, terrorism, all the things that bring up the emotions, and those of you who know the Middle East can imagine, these sessions are not very quiet. And they often end with the students screaming and yelling at each other and stomping out the door. But what makes the Arava Institute unique is that we are located on Kibbutz Keturah, which is in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. So these students have no place to go except back to the same dorms where they're living and studying dorms that, by the way, were built with the help of our friends from the Jewish National Fund. I want to thank you guys for being here. Very helpful, very strong partners for the Arava Institute in doing everything that we do. And the students can only go back to these dorms where they're living together, Jews and Arabs in the same units, sharing tea, sharing coffee, sharing computers, sharing space. What we hope they get out of this is not that we all have to agree, but it's too small a place to not figure out how to get along. And many times the students will tell us the same thing. Hey, I didn't sign up for this. I'm supposed to be here studying the environment. And what we tell them is you really can't learn how to live in peace with nature until you've learned how to live in peace with your neighbor. At the end of the semester, the end of the year, the students all tell us the same thing, which is the most important thing that they did at the Arava Institute was the Peace Building Leadership Seminar. This is where the strong bonds are created. I'll give you an example. We just went through another cycle of violence between Israel and Gaza, and this has been going on for years. The first time it happened after Israel left Gaza was in 2008, and the first Gaza war broke out in December, which was about 2 months after our semester had started. Broke out on a Saturday. Now, as I said, we're an academic institute. We have classes from Sunday. We have Sunday through Thursday as our classes. Friday and Saturday, students are off. So it was Saturday. Most of the students had gone home for the weekend. Jordanians had gone back to Amman. Palestinians back to Bethlehem, to Hebron. Israelis back to Jerusalem, to Tel Aviv. So the place was pretty empty. And I thought to myself on this Saturday morning, well, I guess that's the end of the semester because Jordanians are not going to come back across the border into Israel while there's a war going on. The Palestinians probably won't be able to come back because the border is going to be closed and they won't be allowed in. And many of our Israelis could easily be drafted to the war itself. But lo and behold, by Sunday afternoon, all of our, at the time, 40 students came back to the Institute. The Jordanians came back across the border. Our Palestinian academic director, Tariq, drove up to Bethlehem to bring the Palestinians across the border. We were lucky that none of our Israeli students were drafted. So by Sunday afternoon, the second day of this war with Gaza, we had 40 students back at the Institute, and we, as a staff, asked ourselves, well, can we just go back to teaching about how to share water and how to protect lizards? We have to relate to the fact that 200 miles away, Israelis and Palestinians are shooting at each other, are killing each other. And so we said, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. So that night, we gathered all the students together, about 40 students, and there were faculty, and we were all sitting in a room about this size, in a big circle, and I was sort of sitting in the middle, and you could have cut the silence with a knife. Everybody was just staring at me. And I will admit that at the time I'd given a lot of thought of getting everybody together, but I hadn't really thought about what I was going to say. So I just leaned back and I said, well, does anybody have anything to say? It was like I'd broken the dam. The Palestinians jumped up and they pointed their fingers at the Israelis, said, you're causing a Holocaust on our people. And the Israelis jumped up and they pointed their fingers back at the Palestinians. Where were you last week when the bombs were falling on Sderot? So this fight, went on for a good 2 hours, screaming and yelling at each other. But by the end of the night, they were hugging and crying. And as a group, made a decision that the next day, on the third day of the war with Gaza, they would go out and hold a peace vigil to call for an end of all violence. Now, this was not surprising to me. I kind of assumed that something like that would come out of such a meeting. But I think what was surprising is the fact that on the second night of the war with Gaza, there was one place in the Middle East where Israelis and Palestinians were screaming at each other. They weren't throwing rocks at each other. They weren't shooting at each other. They weren't throwing Molotov cocktails at each other. They were doing what we ask our kids to do. They were using their words. This is what the Arava Institute does. We build relationships between people. We have, as the film mentioned, we now have over 1,100 alumni throughout the world. 80% of our alumni continue to be connected with the Arava Institute through programs, projects, conferences, and social media. We had our recent alumni conference. We had almost 200 participants at the Arava Institute, Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, many from the most recent semesters and many from the first couple of semesters. In other words, we had the whole range. We have people now start bringing their spouses, their kids. It's our vision at the Arava Institute that someday the Minister of the Environment from Israel and the Minister of the Environment from Jordan and the Minister of the Environment from Palestine will all be graduates of the Arava Institute and will know how to work together. So we have a team from our Track 2 Environmental Forum of experts from the Arava Institute and Israelis, Palestinians, Engineers Without Borders is part of our project, and we have people from the municipalities in the West Bank, people from the municipalities in the Israeli side are all part of this process. Everyone, I think, is aware that Gaza is a major humanitarian crisis. As part of our Track 2 process, we have very close partners, Palestinian partners, who work with us. They're former ministers in the Palestinian Authority who are trying to just get some things done. Two of them are formerly from Gaza, and they have family in Gaza. Gaza today, there's 3 to 4 hours of electricity every day. There's not enough electricity to run hospitals, schools, wastewater treatment plants. So everybody has a interest in solving this problem, and what we've done is we are working with our Palestinian colleagues from Gaza to develop solutions such as a solar field that will be built on the land of wastewater treatment plants and will run the wastewater treatment plant through solar energy and enable them to start treating the wastewater. We have a number of other projects in that sphere. The scarcest resource in the Middle East is not water, it's trust. And that's what we do at the Arava Institute. We build trust. Thank you.
We're going to now leave to go on the tour of the sustainability labs of the college. We're going to stop and see a very brief screening of Science on a Sphere, looking at global water issues. Thank you all so much for being here with us, and thank you